But we are approaching speaker number 2 of this evening, while sticking to the profile of a serial entrepreneur. Adrian Locher has been a serial entrepreneur and investor over the past 20 years, founding more than 10 companies in the US and Europe in healthcare, e-commerce, and AI. He sold his previous venture, a leading Swiss e-commerce firm, at a 100 million euros revenue. The idea of his current venture actually came into his mind when he was traveling. Back in 2015, he was living in San Francisco and traveling to Munich to visit the Oktoberfest and friends. The idea he got on this trip actually turned into reality. And today, he is the CEO and co-founder of Berlin-based Merantix, the world's first venture studio for AI. Adrian Locher for sure knows how to harness the rapidly changing digital solutions, and he also knows why it might be better for us to building up reliable ecosystems of partners, collaborators, and challengers instead of mapping out detailed strategies. Adrian Locher, it is a pleasure having you with us tonight. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Felicitas, for the nice and warm welcome. And hi, everybody. I'm very glad to be here, and thanks for inviting me. As Felicitas already mentioned, I decided to build Merantix while I was on a trip from San Francisco to Munich. And in the course also decided to actually come back to Europe again and help Europe to not lose the train when it comes to machine learning, or some also call it artificial intelligence, and why we have decided to build Merantix here in Europe and also then in Berlin. We're going to learn today. I'm super happy to today talk a bit about why we believe that building an ecosystem is much more important than actually just having strategies. As some of you might know, the German government has come up with an AI strategy already in 2018. The problem of this is since then, not a lot has happened, and a lot of money still sits in some accounts, and there is still no plan of actually spending this. So I'm going to show you today how you can also do different at much smaller scale, and how we actually build our AI ecosystem that we have today. But first, let's look at the landscape in general. We all know that US and China are actually much more advanced when it comes to AI. But if we look closer into research and we look at the numbers of professors and researchers per capita, actually one thing is very interesting that we can learn, that actually Germany has more AI researchers per capita than the US and China combined. However, when it comes to the actual funding of the technology, which we also call the transfer into real-world products, the whole game looks very much different. These are numbers from an older study. Just a couple of weeks ago, we got newer numbers from the AI study that was done at Stanford. And the numbers are even more shocking to say, because in Germany, we have around 2 billion spending on AI projects, while in the US, we have 20 billion, which is 10x on that. So if it's not the research, if it's not the bright minds that actually is lacking, what is it then? Well, if you look at what it actually needs to build successful AI, it is an amalgamation of 3 different things. You need to have the cutting edge research. You also need to have industry players who are actually willing to adopt and build those technologies. and you need to have the talent who is able to execute on it. And the interesting thing about Europe, and this was one of the reasons why we decided to build Merantix in Germany and Europe and not the US, San Francisco, is actually we have all that. We are just lacking in putting things together in the right way. If you look at, if you look at the research, again, as we have shown before, we have cutting edge research, we have amazing professors, we have amazing research institutes that are actually doing really, really good research that is at the forefront of the current development. We also have a lot of very successful industry players, and I'm not talking about the DAX corporates only, but also the lot of Mittelstand companies that are world leading in their space and actually also very keen to adapt and transform their businesses into the digital realm. Then also we have the talent. We have really, really great researchers. We have really, really great entrepreneurs also. And now we just need to make sure that these things come together. And this is kind of the why of Merantix. So Merantix was built around the core belief of bringing all these different disciplines together and build amazing teams. So our whole approach, as you also will learn a bit later, is based on bringing everything together. If you look at our model that we use to build companies, it is kind of self-explanatory. We start with the right kind of research. We have a lot of research collaborations with world-leading institutes, with world-leading facilities in research and AI transformation. We build very, very strong partnerships with leading firms, be it corporates, but also Mittelstand, when it comes to getting the right data sets together. We have an amazing pool of talents that we are able to tap into when it comes to looking for specific resources for specific ventures. And we also provide the right kind of financing that you need for these projects, which is not only a lot of money, but also very patient capital, because as most of you probably will know, doing research and then transforming or transferring this research into daily products actually requires a lot of patience and standing power. And furthermore, also one thing that we should not forget is regulation. Regulation is quite crucial when it comes to technologies like AI, which people sometimes feel insecure, and these concerns need to be addressed. Also, the regulators themselves need to be educated, because those technologies usually move faster than the legislation processes to come up with new laws. So only if you really manage all these different disciplines, you can actually also build successful companies. And we do that in a three-step approach, which today I'm not going to go much more into depth, but telling you those three steps, which start typically with the ideation validation process, where we actually look for new ideas and then also test them out in the market and also test the business side of it, not only the technology feasible, but also really how it translates into successful business models and whether you find clients who are willing to also buy. Only after these steps have been completed, we move into the actual incubation stage, where we then build the products, build the teams, onboard the first customers, and start preparing the go-to market, which then happens in the scaling phase, where we also start to put funding from our investment fund into those ventures. Over the last 4 years, we have built respectively 5 ventures, and 3 more are in the making. I won't go any deeper, but please ping me afterwards if you're interested in learning more about some of them, or also if you're interested to learn more about the ones that are still in stealth mode. I'm very happy to talk you through that. Also, I'd like to show you a bit of the research currently that is going on at our labs, which could translate into new companies over the next couple of years. Our goal is actually over the next 4 years to build 10 to 15 more companies. Things we're looking into like climate change, quantum computing, manufacturing, agriculture, data protection, and actually much more to come. Education, as an example, is just something we recently started to look into and we're very excited about. Again, if you have ideas, please do not hesitate to actually get in touch with me. I'll share my contacts later in the end. So over the last 4 years, we have actually built this ecosystem that is based on 4 pillars. The first pillar, as I mentioned before, is talent. So nothing beats attracting the right people and building them into great high-performing teams that can then lead to really amazing performing companies. We are also founders, founding partners, founding members of the German AI Association, which has become one of the most important voices in the machine learning AI space when it comes to the connection to the government and politics. The association currently has more than 300 members and has proven to be very successful. We only started 3 years ago. As mentioned, there also, of course, needs to be the money. This is why we have built a rather small fund that is focused on the actual incubation and seed stage of our companies. With those 30 million, we plan to build around 15 companies over 4 years. And we have attracted a number of very well-known institutional investors to that fund. And some more investors will be announced in the next couple of weeks, actually. Also, one more pillar to success for us is a company called Merantix Labs, which is one of our portfolio companies. This company actually helps industry companies, industry players, Mittelstand and corporates to adapt machine learning into their current business models and further evolve. And the company for our venture studio also serves as go-to-market and testing grounds for new ideas. Last but not least, we are super proud to talk about our campus, of course, that we have just recently opened in April, to be exact. It's a space that has more than 5,000 square meters, 50,000 square feet. It's 5 minutes north from Nordbahnhof. It has 450 desks for 450 people. It contains 30 ventures, but also corporates, also research teams from universities, investors, and also some government-related initiatives. And as I mentioned before, we have opened it in April only of this year. And as you can see, it's live. This is actually not renderings, but it's actual photos of the space that we have built, all around the idea of collaboration. And if you like to join, please let me know. You can always come by and have a coffee and talk to us. Thank you very much.
Adrian Locher, thank you very much for your talk. And first of all, congratulations on opening your AI campus. I think some of us will for sure visit you there once we are in Berlin. And I say we jump right into our Q&A, and we already get some questions. And the first one is actually touches ground with the German AI Association, maybe. And the question is, what role does politics play in your ecosystem model, and how do you interact with politics?
So we interact almost on a daily basis with politics. The political landscape plays a very important role, both for policy making on the regulation side, but also on the investment side, because I believe that groundbreaking technologies also always need a lot of investment from a government to actually facilitate the growth and transformation of this technology. So it goes without saying that both sides, the regulatory environment, but also the public investment environment, are very, very crucial. And the AI association's most vital role is actually help translating what the economy, what the technology needs into the political realm.
The next question is about starting up, and it is, what is the hardest part of building an AI startup? The person asks himself, is it finding the right people? He guesses that most of the engineers want to exploit their income possibilities.
That's a very interesting question. I think indeed, in my eyes and in our experience, it is finding the right people. Because if you imagine to build a successful company in the machine learning AI space, you often need a lot of very, very different disciplines. This is also research silos that usually don't really meet in the real world. So just to give you an example, looking at our medical imaging company, Vara, there you had to combine medical doctors with engineers, with regulatory people, with sales marketing people, with customer success people. And only after bringing them all together, making them one team with one culture, you can actually build a successful company. So I truly believe that the success and the secret sauce lies in actually bringing the right people together that can do magic things. This is also something that relies on my experience as an entrepreneur and investor. It's always the teams that make the success.
That's good to hear. And we're already coming to the last question of tonight. Yeah, we just talked about starting up, and a relevant part about that is funding. And this question goes in this direction. Talking more about the financing component of the Merantix approach, can you elaborate more on patient funding and maybe quantify the timeline?
Yeah, so very happy to do that. So we usually, when we start this ideation validation phase, we give ourselves and our entrepreneurs, founders, 6 to 12 months to actually validate the first ideas and see whether we want to incubate them. And after the incubation, we give ourselves another roughly 2 years to actually build the company until it is Series A ready. So we provide the seed financing that is enough for 1 to 2 years to sustain and build the actual traction that is needed for success. And during that time, we invest between 1 and 3 million into those companies, which actually sounds rather small. And I can say from experience that given our whole ecosystem and all the resources that we have in our studio, the equivalent of that amount is actually 2 or 3 times higher because we're just much more efficient at doing things.
Thanks a lot for that answer, and thanks a lot for answering all of our questions.